back, man. It's been a long time since we've done this.
This is for the one guy that was like, hey, I watched all those.
Yeah, exactly. We've had like 4 or 5 listeners in the past, but we took a long hiatus working on other projects, but we're back.
Yeah, that's right. So the thing had on my mind to talk about, I'll give just a little bit of background, and then I kind of just want you to freestyle on it.
Let's
and just go with it. So,
go.
So the 2 ideas, being versus becoming. This is something that I've had on my mind. Recently, I was journaling about it and was looking at the literary element of the words, right? So, and came up with what I'm sure somebody else has come up with this. I have no doubt, but it feels original. It feels original. So I'm rolling with it. Becoming is changing the core of being.
Becoming is changing the core of being.
Literally. If you take the word being and you add C-O-M.
Coming.
Yeah. C-O-M. Then it changes the word, right?
Yeah.
And also the figurative meaning is there as well. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious, we're here, this is beginning of the year, and I've had already like 4 or 5 people ask, hey, what are your New Year's goals? What are you doing this year? And part of me is like, man, I've been working on stuff. Why would I have to, set up some new stuff now? And I know that in the past I've gotten burnout by setting goals and not committing to them. They're not effective or whatever. And I've also had experiences where maybe my heart wasn't in it. And having this thing of being too anxious about what I was trying to accomplish. So in some ways I look forward to it because it's like, look at all the potential, but on the backside, it's like, it could bring anxiety and depression and all sorts of other things.
To set the goals, you mean?
To set the goals and maybe not even be able to follow through on them because it's too high bar, right? So I'm curious, like, what has been your experience? Like, with goal setting, this is essentially changing habits, and this is really one of your fortes, right?
Right.
Is helping people with that. So how do you help people to focus on the right parts at the right time, being versus becoming? And like, what is that challenge that you see in the therapy world?
Yeah, that's a great thought. And I just, as you're talking and just thinking about that concept of the changing the core of the word being versus becoming, there's almost a dialectic in those 2 things that you just said, where occasionally I'll have a client where I'm trying to help them just be okay with just being. In fact, I think in my office on my board, I have a sign to remind me, simply be. Right? because I might be a little bit too anxious and too amped up some of the times, and maybe a little bit too overly engaged. And I'm trying to remind myself that it's okay to just be content with who I am. And then on other occasions, I'm trying to push a client to say, we're in the process of becoming. And the truth is that we as human beings, I believe this is just built into us, like hardwired from the time we're born, is that there's something deep inside of us that yearns for growth, that needs to change, it needs to grow. I believe that the whole purpose of our life is actually, this is basically a laboratory for growth, this world that we live in. And so we're sort of robbing ourselves if we don't allow that part of ourselves to be like trying to grow. Now the challenge is it seems that if we set the goals too high, or the expectations too high, or we have the wrong core belief about what we're trying to do, then it can fuel anxiety and depression. That's what you're saying. I think you're trying to say, right? And so it's like, where's the middle ground? How do we come to the middle ground of being able to find the truth in both sides of that dialectic, that I can be okay with who I am, with where I'm at in my own progress, with trying to realistically look at myself in my own life journey and say, I like who I am, and still accept that there's going to be something else that I need to be engaged in for me to have a wholehearted life, for me to feel good about myself, for me to feel good about my direction. And I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. One is that if I were to just embrace that I'm going to change the rest of my life, now I don't have to be in a rush about it.
You got all, hopefully you got a while.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I have the rest of my life to grow. So the amount of growth might be something we want to try to measure, but if I were to just accept that I'm going to grow the rest of my life, now I can maybe come back to the day-to-day grind right now and say, let's say I want to lose 30 pounds.
Try and get that beach body for summer.
Exactly. I told my daughter that I'd be in shape by her wedding, which is coming up in like 5 months.
Did she laugh at you?
She said, I hope that's true, Dad. she said,
for the photo's sake.
She said, Dad, I would love that. I hope you're in shape, but not just for her wedding, but we went hiking. She was here for the holidays and we went hiking and then she made me go for a 2-mile jog. My two older daughters are running 10 miles a day just as part of their training. It's like they just do that because they do that. And they're like, Dad, come run the last 2 miles with us. I'm like, okay, that's no problem. It's the last 2 miles. They're going to be tired. I got like less than a mile in and I thought I was going to die. I'm like so out of shape. My daughters are laughing at me, but they're also like going home and like telling my wife, like, I'm scared for Dad's health. Like, I don't know if Dad's going to live much longer. Like
all the things you've ever said about your
everything
parents.
that I say about my parents, my daughters are saying that in front of me to my wife about me, I'm just like, you know what? There was a reality check in that for me that it was like, how fast and far have I let myself go, and for me, if I go out and try to run 10 miles today, if I make it, which I won't, but if I make it, I won't run tomorrow,
right?
Because I'll just be done. My body will be shot. But if I can get out there today and I can say, you know what, I'm going to run a mile and a half, or I'm going to hike 2 miles, and I start to do that consistently a little bit over time, I'm actually going to end up being able to run 10 miles by the time my daughter's wedding rolls around. It's not, It won't even be a problem for me, but it's going to take that little bit of consistency at a certain level. We don't need to necessarily max out all the time. In fact, there's some research that shows that if we're training hard for something, let's say we want to change something, that the person who trains at about 80% capacity consistently over time actually outperforms the person who goes out and just maxes themselves every time trying to work hard, which is kind of counterintuitive. Because we're thinking, I got to press myself to the limit every time to get better. And the truth is if I want to be able to run 10 miles and let's say I want to run a race of a half marathon, if I build my training up to where I'm training at 80% of my capacity and get to where I can run 15 or 20 miles, then on race day, I can max myself at 13 miles and it's not even going to kill me. And I'm going to overperform what I could have done otherwise. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, some of the changes that I've been working on, part of the reason I'm asking about this in particular is because I really want to know for my own situation, right? I've got, I spent some time this last week looking at my schedule and doing some time budgeting, right? What would the week look like if I were to try and include all of these goals? And it's tight.
You're not going to have any room.
Right. That's the problem is I'm feeling some of that pressure. And the other struggle is that it's not just me that I'm trying to factor in. It's my wife, it's my kids. It's, social circles, friends,
your other
family.
priorities.
Work, all of that. And, so one of the things that's on my mind right now, is really whether or not I should do this, master's program and start next week or postpone, which I have the option of doing, because as I'm looking at everything, it's like, this looks like 100% full, not 80%.
Like your current schedule looks like 100%.
If I commit to doing this program.
Yeah, which puts you right at that like red level line of, maximum output. A semester. Right. And then maybe the next semester, unless something else in your life can be changed or gives a little bit, right? And that's the hard part, is trying to figure out make that decision that we want to be in a position where it's uncomfortable and we're being pushed, as long as it's not so big that it buries us.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It's like, if you go watch a 16 seed play a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, it's only fun to watch for the first 5 minutes.
And then they just start mopping.
Yeah. Then it's like, okay, by halftime, the 16 seed is down by 30. But everybody who's a basketball fan wants to tune in to the 12-5, to the 11-6, to the 7-10 games, because the underseeded team is just being stretched, but it's still within the limit of their growth, right? And I wonder if in your situation, it's trying to find where is that line and that limit, right? Like, a part of me really wants you. I want you to be in school this semester,
right?
Because I want you to be able to get moving. I think you're more capable than you might think you are. I think you might take less time than you think you'll need to at school. I don't know if that's true or not.
I'm a slow reader.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. All right.
yeah. But you have a lot of intuition, and you've been in this like therapy world for a while, that I think you're going to know more than you think you know.
Yeah.
And, but I get it. And I also don't want you to be buried, because then that makes your life suffer. That makes our business suffer. That makes everything else suffer. And so it is kind of a gamble.
Yeah.
But you want to be stretched as long as it's not completely being buried.
Right. So I'm curious I know you've been making some big changes, right?
Yeah.
And how's that process been for you of trying to find what is the sweet spot? What has been the times where you're like, I can't believe I just did that, or times where you were like, I'm so glad, or times where, like what's that journey
I shouldn't
for
have
you?
taken this on, or I should have, Actually, right now, one thing that I'm working on for myself right now that's kind of in the same realm of what we're talking about is I've decided to like theme my year this year. The word that I've chosen is reclamation. So and there's reasons for that. We're working on a project that has the word reclaim in it, but I've just, after this thing with my daughters and my health, I thought, I've got to, I need to not just lose the weight. I need to reclaim my health. Like, I made too many excuses with these hip replacements that I can't be an athlete anymore, that I can't, it's like, I'm going to reclaim all that.
Yeah, I want to see you on the basketball court, dude. I've got to dunk on you.
That's why I haven't played, is because I know I lose now. I only play games I know I can win. So, yeah.
I know I still waxed you in a choir a couple weeks ago.
I'm still mad about that. I want to play again. But like, so for me, where I'm at is I sat down at the first, as the first of the year is coming up, and I said, okay, I'm going to go intermittent fasting every single day. I'm going to go running every day. I'm going to do the cold plunge every day. I'm going to be eating keto every day in my intermittent fasting. And the very first day of the year, like, I wake up and I've got like the hangover of like, oh no, I've got real life ahead of me now. Did I do all those things? Like, no way. Like, I didn't do all those things. So what I decided to do for myself is I said, this week is intermittent fasting week. And if I feel okay, like I can do it, the next week is going to be that I'm going to get to the gym every single day. Or I'm going to at least target that for the next couple of weeks. And so my goal is that instead of like hitting the ground at full sprint this year, I think I'm going to try to be at full running capacity by the end of January. So I can build in, each week I'm going to add a little bit more instead of trying to just do it all at once. And I think that's going to, I actually feel pretty confident that I'm going to be able to do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's kind of, I don't know if it's answering your question that you were talking about with, is this school starting next week? Is that too much, or is it just the next step because you already got a couple other things working for you right now in your other goals and in your other commitments that are they take your time, but they don't take a lot of your willpower because you're already doing them.
Yeah, exactly. So some of them, for example, my buddy Chase and myself, we've been working out in the mornings, and that's something we started back in early December.
Yeah, it's been a month or so.
Yeah, 5 days a week. We've been able to make that work, getting up at over to the gym by 5:30. And the workouts we're doing, they're challenging, but they're not the 100% like you were talking about. But that's been so good and so consistent that I'm like, okay, maybe I can add something. Because it feels like it's flowing now, like it's truly habitual. And the other part of that is I have some body. You talked about this in one of your videos last week. That's accountable.
Yeah.
That I'm accountable to.
Yeah, you have a partner there.
Yeah, and seriously, like 5:30 hits, I open up the door and I'm walking out. Chase across the way, he's my neighbor as well. I see him. He opens up the door same time, and we're headed to the car. There's only been one time so far that he's texted like, "Hey man, I'm still getting my shoes on," you know. Yeah. But otherwise, it's like clockwork. Yeah. And with something like that, feels so good to have it not totally cemented in place, but getting there. It's like it's curing or something. That now I can maybe add another brick. It feels
almost like you guys have that running. Your willpower has been used to start the habit, and the habit is actually now starting to form, which means theoretically you have willpower to put towards maybe the next piece of growth if you want to use it wherever you want to use it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, it kind of sounds like that's essentially what you're also doing. Is instead of like all at once, like let's spread this thing out and build it up. Yeah, that's interesting. So, I guess I'm curious. Do you have any other goals that you've set that you're like, I don't know about that one, or some that, yeah.
Well, I mean, like for this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you and I set a pretty massive goal as far as our business ventures this year. Yeah. And every single day I wake up and I try to change the language from, I wonder if that's possible, to, yeah, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Not if,
when we do this thing, when we actually build out these programs that we're trying to build out right now, it's going to be awesome.
Right.
You know, but yeah, so I've made some really big goals for our business, and I think you and I are going to set some other goals for our specific practice. I made some really big goals for my physical health in terms of like the things that I just mentioned to you, reclaiming my status as someone that I could consider athletic. You know, and then I made some other goals that are a little bit more personal, just with my spiritual life. The last several years I've been kind of trying to make an organic relationship with God, and I feel really good about that. I feel really connected to God right now. I feel like I know He loves me. I feel like He's told me who I am. Some of the things that, like everything we do with our job is related to that. But I also realize that maybe I haven't been in my journey to become organic with God. I could have some room for a little bit of formality with my relationship with God too. I was so formal early on in my life that I almost became averse to the formality. And so,
which maybe is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
So all my family's like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah. Right. And that's the wrestle, right? Like that's the wrestle. And that's kind of where I've been for a while. And so I don't want to go back to where I was, where it's like rigid and like you got to keep certain commandments. But I also feel like there could be some benefit to my relationship with God if I chose some formality. So I'm trying to be more formal occasionally in my prayers, where I'm going to try to be on my knees when I pray at least once a day. I usually pray to God while I'm just driving to work or in between sessions, or I just kind of informally pray. But I felt like there might be some value to being on my knees, the intentionality of being there intentionally to try to commune with God and hear what He has to say for me, almost like a meditation. So that's one of my other goals spiritually that I'm trying to do. And to be honest with you, out of all the things that I could say I'm doing, that one sounds the easiest, and I think it's going to be the hardest. You know?
Yeah. If anybody looked at your list, they would probably think you're crazy.
Get up and do intermittent fasting every day, and once a month do a 48-hour fast, and go to the gym every single day, and
cold
only
water,
eat keto, and do cold water immersion, and once a day kneel down and pray to God. You know, but for me, that one might be my hardest one.
Right. Yeah. So that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you talked about a couple of different areas, but one of them that I am curious about is, what about relationally with other people? Like, do you have anything that you're doing there?
You know, I haven't actually set anything in stone, but it's been pressing on me. I realized that I have this weird thing about myself personally, where I love people and I love to help people. But when it comes to like social life, I feel like sometimes I miss deeper connection with people because I get so focused on other things. You know, like if we're playing a game, like when we're playing a choir, it's fun to be with you, but I want to beat you. You know,
Yeah.
the goal is to play the game itself. It's like last night I went to play pickleball for the first time in like probably 5-6 years. I got invited by some guys in my neighborhood to go play pickleball or basketball. It was pickleball last night. And because of UPS where I'd been working, I never go because I'm always so tired. And finally, this is the first time in like years I went to play, and I was like so excited. My wife's like, "Go play with your friends. You got new friends," you know, like mocking me as I go out the door. But for me, it's like, yeah, that was fun, and I'm excited to be like making my new friends. But I was more excited just to play pickleball.
Right.
You know, I could have played pickleball with a lot of other dudes and been just as happy. You know, and so one of my goals that I haven't actually set is to try to figure out how to value relationship for relationship's sake, and that goes all the way down to my kids, even my wife, even more. You know, I love being with my wife, we're best friends, but I want to be able to actually really be present with people. I haven't figured out what my goals are for that, but that's been something that's been pressing on me and weighing on me for a while. So how about you?
You know, I think most recently it's just been trying to focus on the relationship with my wife and kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so easy for me, kind of like the way you were talking about with, you spend a lot of time with people really in your work, and you are having these deep conversations. So I can imagine by the time you're done, you're not like, let's go hang out with more people.
Yeah, right.
You know, so that is a factor for you. But on my end of things, like I get so excited about the work that we're doing, which is a huge gift.
Yeah, it
right.
really is,
Like
yeah.
I could spend way too long
Yeah.
doing it. I'm trying to figure out, how do I not become a workaholic, and not even so much the workaholic side of things. How do I just be present at home? Oh, here's a thought I had last week that I've never thought about before. I spend every day that I come into the office, right? I spend time thinking about, how do I make this business, this organization, this anything, this entity, all these relationships, how do I make this better?
Yeah.
Right. That is the mindset the moment I walk in, like, or even when I'm commuting to work, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
on my mind. So when I go home, it's really hard for me to switch gears and say, stop trying to make things better.
Yes.
And just be, just
show up.
simply be, right?
Just show up.
Yeah, just show up. And I never thought about that, but it was the first time last week where I recognized it and said, I need to figure out how to shut that down and focus on what my wife is saying, because she just needs to say it.
Yes.
And I can be a good listener, and I can be
Yep.
empathetic, and not somebody who's like, well, here's 3 ideas on how you can resolve that issue.
Solve the problem.
Yeah, solve the
Fix it.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So taking that business mindset into other places, I'm trying to figure out how to slow that down, and just be present. So
I think that's a big challenge, man. One of my biggest struggles, and I find this a lot, is that even when I'm talking to someone, you or my wife or my kids, I always have the business project going in my brain.
yes,
It's always there. Like,
Yeah.
and it almost feels like I'm trying to put them in compartments where I'm trying to look at my wife and listen to what she says, and in my mind I'm still thinking like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I know that she can sense that my presence isn't there.
Right.
Right. And that's something that I really like. One of my biggest goals that I set a few years ago with my kids was, when I get home from work, I want to give them full presence. And it's been really hard because that place in my brain is always spinning, because I like it. Like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's my passion, and I feel like it's a calling, you know, but there is some merit to it. Man, when I finally tap in and get those moments when I get it right, where I'm there and we're attuned and present, whether it's with my kids or my wife, and I'm able to lay those things down, there is some really deep richness there, and some vibrance that happens inside those relationships. And yeah, it's just a constant work and effort. on my part too to do that. I don't know if I can give you the answer for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it
But
does sound like it's just
it's just a
work.
battle. It's work. A lot of work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've noticed, just kind of wrap up, but I was just thinking about how great the holidays have been for that reason. Last week was one of the best weeks that I've ever had with my family.
That's
awesome. It was just amazing, just spending time with these little people. I've got a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old that are incredible.
Yeah, they are.
And my wife is awesome, and I think I've been so fixated on other things that I'm just really trying to show up differently for her.
Yeah.
And give her some more space that she needs, and also just recognize the beauty that she is.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's so cool to have that. I think that's one of the blessings of the holidays and why they happen the way they do. I hear you. I felt the same way. We had a change of plans to our holidays. We were going to go on a trip, and instead the girls were like, "Dad, let's just go home." And we went home, and for 4 days sat around the house and played games with each other. And even in the midst of the fighting and arguing over the games, it was freaking awesome.
I know, we showed up for a moment. I was like, "Whew, it's tense in here."
But it was just awesome to have the focus be on the relationships themselves. And yeah, that's awesome. I think it's awesome that you're doing the work you're doing with your family. So yeah, that's good, man. Good to get back and doing this again, even if it's in the snow.
I love the snow. It's
great.
helping soften the sounds all around, and it's good for lighting.
Yeah, great.
All right.